My brother called me selfish. My mother agreed. But when my 8-year-old son stood up at our family reunion and defended me in front of everyone, the room went dead silent. What he said next changed everything. Have you ever had a moment where you realized the people who should love you most actually see you as the villain in their story? I'm Sarah Chen, and until 3 months ago, I believed my own family when they told me I was selfish, ungrateful, and the one who abandoned them. I'm 34 years old, a divorced mother of one incredible little boy, and I've been working 2 jobs just to keep our heads above water since my ex-husband decided our marriage wasn't worth fighting for. My son Tommy is 8 years old, and he's got these big brown eyes that seem to see everything adults miss. He's quiet in crowds, the kind of kid who watches and listens before he speaks. He's been my anchor through the hardest 2 years of my life, and honestly, some days he feels more like my teammate than my child. We've been through divorce, financial struggles, and more sleepless nights than I care to count, but we've done it together. My mother, Linda Chen, is 62, and the kind of woman who believes family loyalty means never questioning the family hierarchy. She's got strong opinions about how things should be done, and those opinions usually involve everyone staying close to home, following tradition, and never rocking the boat. She's been the matriarch of our family since my father passed away 5 years ago, and she wears that role like armor. Then there's my brother Marcus. He's 29. Still living in my childhood bedroom, and somehow he's become the golden child despite never quite launching into full adulthood. He works part-time at our uncle's auto shop, spends his weekends playing video games, and has never had to worry about rent, groceries, or keeping another human being alive. But in my mother's eyes, he's the one who stayed. He's the one who's always available for family dinners, holiday preparations, and weekend projects around the house. The supporting cast of our family drama includes Uncle Ray, my dad's brother who never married and treats every family gathering like his personal audience. Cousin Beth, who's always been competitive about everything from grades to career success. And Aunt Marie, my mother's sister who has perfected the art of the backhanded compliment. They're all good people individually, but together they form this unit that I somehow never quite fit into. I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened at that family reunion. For the past 2 years, I've been questioning everything about myself. When your own family tells you repeatedly that you're selfish, that you take more than you give, that you've somehow failed them, you start to believe it. I'd lie awake at night after these family interactions, replaying conversations and wondering if they were right. Maybe I was too focused on my own problems. Maybe I wasn't grateful enough for their help. Maybe I really had become the kind of person who only showed up when I needed something. The morning of the reunion, I stood in my tiny apartment kitchen at 5 a.m. making homemade apple turnovers because I couldn't afford to buy something nice from the bakery. Tommy was still sleeping, and I was already exhausted from my early morning shift at the coffee shop. I kept telling myself this gathering would be different. I'd be more present, more grateful, more of the daughter and sister they wanted me to be. But as I rolled out that pastry dough, I had no idea that by the end of that day, everything I thought I knew about my place in this family would be turned completely upside down. I had no idea that my quiet, observant little boy had been watching our family dynamics with the clarity that only children seem to possess, and I definitely had no idea that he was about to defend me in a way that would leave a room full of adults speechless and force them to confront some uncomfortable truths about how they'd been treating me. What happened next didn't just change how my family saw me, it changed how I saw myself, and it all started with a slideshow and a little boy who refused to let his mother be invisible anymore. Let me paint you a picture of what my life looked like in the months leading up to that reunion. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., my alarm would go off in our small 2-bedroom apartment. I'd stumble to the kitchen, start the coffee maker, and get ready for my opening shift at Sunrise Cafe downtown. Tommy would still be sleeping, his superhero pajamas twisted around his small frame, completely peaceful in that way only children can be. By 5:45 a.m., I'd be behind the espresso machine making lattes for the early morning crowd of nurses, construction workers, and other people whose jobs started before the sun came up. The pay wasn't great, but the tips helped. And my manager Lisa was understanding when I needed to leave for Tommy's school events. After 6 hours of nonstop coffee orders, I'd rush home to get Tommy from his after-school program, help him with homework, make dinner, and then head out again. My evening job was cleaning office buildings downtown. While other families were watching TV together, I was vacuuming conference rooms and scrubbing bathrooms. I'd get home around 10 p.m., check on Tommy's homework one more time, and fall into bed exhausted, only to start the cycle again in a few hours. This was my reality, 7 days a week, with Sunday being my only partial day off. The financial pressure was constant. Every month was a careful dance of which bills to pay first, which groceries were absolutely necessary, and whether we could afford things like Tommy's soccer cleats or a new winter coat. I'd learned to shop clearance racks, clip every coupon, and make meals stretch for days. Pride kept me from asking my family for help very often, but when I absolutely had to, the shame was almost unbearable. My mother, Linda, saw my independence as stubbornness. From her perspective, I was the daughter who moved out at 18 to marry David against her advice, had a baby too young, and then threw away my marriage when things got difficult. She never said it directly, but I felt her disappointment every time she compared my choices to Marcus's. In her mind, Marcus was the responsible one because he stayed close to home, helped with her grocery shopping, and was always available for family dinners. The truth was more complicated. I'd left home at 18 because I felt suffocated by the constant criticism and comparisons. When I married David, I thought I was finally building something that was mine. For 8 years, we were happy. We bought a little house, had Tommy, and I thought we were building the life I'd always wanted. But when David's affair came to light, my world collapsed. The divorce wasn't something I chose lightly. It was something I had to do to preserve any sense of self-worth I had left. My family's reaction to the divorce revealed everything about how they really saw me. Instead of support, I got lectures about trying harder and thinking about Tommy's needs. When I had to sell the house and move into our apartment, instead of understanding, I got judgmental looks and comments about poor choices. Marcus would make snide remarks about how I thought I was better than everyone when I was married, but now I was back to needing the family. But here's what they didn't understand. I desperately wanted Tommy to have what I'd felt I was missing, a sense of belonging to something bigger than just the two of us. He deserved grandparents who adored him, an uncle who taught him things, cousins to play with at family gatherings. So despite the tension, despite feeling like an outsider at every family event, I kept showing up. I kept trying to bridge the gap between who they thought I was and who I actually was. The annual Chen family reunion was always held the third Saturday in September at my mother's house. It was the one day each year when everyone made an effort to be together. Aunts and uncles, cousins, and family friends. Photos were taken, stories were shared, and for a few hours we all pretended we were the close-knit family we used to be when my father was alive. This year, I was particularly hopeful. Tommy was old enough now to really connect with his extended family, and I'd been working extra shifts to make sure I could bring something special to contribute. I wanted so badly for this gathering to be different, for them to see that I wasn't the selfish person they seemed to think I was. I wanted to belong again. The morning of the reunion, I woke up with butterflies in my stomach and genuine hope in my heart. Tommy and I spent an hour getting ready, him in his best khakis and polo shirt, me in a dress I'd found at a thrift store but had dry cleaned for the occasion. I'd stayed up until midnight the night before making those apple turnovers from scratch, and they looked perfect sitting in my grandmother's old pie carrier. We arrived at my mother's house right on time at noon. The familiar smell of her pot roast hit me as soon as she opened the door, and for a moment, I felt like I was 8 years old again, when Sunday dinners were warm and welcoming instead of tense negotiations. "Look who decided to show up," Marcus called from the living room, not even getting up from the couch where he was scrolling through his phone. There was that familiar edge in his voice, like he was already annoyed with me before I'd even gotten through the door. I forced a smile. "Hi, Marcus. Good to see you, too." My mother, Linda, hugged Tommy first, which stung a little, but I understood. Grandmothers are supposed to light up for their grandchildren. When she finally acknowledged me, it was with a quick pat on the shoulder and an immediate critique. "You look tired, Sarah. Are you getting enough sleep?" "I'm fine, Mom. I brought apple turnovers, homemade." I held up the pie carrier hopefully. She barely glanced at it. Oh, that's nice, honey. I already made dessert, though. You can just put those wherever. The first hour was awkward but manageable. I helped set the table, complimented Aunt Marie's new haircut, and listened to Uncle Ray's story about his latest fishing trip for the third time this year. Tommy was being his usual quiet self, staying close to me but observing everything with those big brown eyes. During dinner, I tried to contribute to the conversation, sharing a funny story about a customer at the coffee shop. The table went quiet for a moment before Marcus jumped in with his own story that completely overshadowed mine. It was a pattern I knew well, but I kept trying. When Linda started clearing dishes, I immediately stood up to help. "You don't know where anything goes anymore," she said, gently pushing me back toward my seat. The words were said sweetly, but they cut deep. I'd only been gone from this house for 16 years, but apparently that was long enough to become a stranger. That's when I made my mistake. Looking at my watch, I realized I needed to start thinking about leaving soon. "Mom, I hate to mention this during dinner, but I'll need to head out by 7. I have to open the cafe tomorrow morning, and Tommy has school." The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Marcus's fork clattered against his plate. "Are you kidding me right now?" "What do you mean?" "This is exactly what I'm talking about, Mom." He turned to Linda, speaking about me like I wasn't sitting right there. "Sarah never does anything for this family. She shows up when it's convenient, takes a few photos for her social media to prove she was here, then disappears again the second she has an excuse." My cheeks burned. "Marcus, that's not fair. I have responsibilities." "Responsibilities?" He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What about your responsibility to this family?" Linda nodded slowly, and I watched my mother side with my brother right in front of everyone. "It's true, honey. You've been taking from this family for years. We babysit Tommy when you need us. We help with school supplies. We're always here when you call, but you're never here for us." Uncle Ray joined in. "Your father's birthday last year, you couldn't make it. Your mother's surgery recovery, nowhere to be found." "I was working," I said weakly, but Cousin Beth was already piling on. "Christmas dinner 2 years ago, Marcus's graduation party, Aunt Marie's anniversary celebration. Where were you?" "I had to work. I'm a single mother trying to keep us afloat." "There's always an excuse," Marcus said, his voice getting louder. "You left this family when you got married, acted like you were too good for us, and now that your perfect life fell apart, you want us to welcome you back whenever it's convenient for you." The room was spinning. Every family member I'd hoped would defend me was either nodding in agreement or looking away uncomfortably. Tommy had stopped eating and was staring at his plate, his small shoulders tense. "That's not how it is," I whispered. But I could feel tears threatening, and I knew if I started crying, it would only prove their point that I was dramatic and selfish. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Maybe we should just go. I stood there for a moment, gripping the back of my chair, trying to collect myself before I completely fell apart in front of everyone. The dining room felt suffocating, filled with the heavy silence that follows a brutal truth-telling session, except I wasn't sure whose truth had actually been told. "Tommy, sweetie, let's get our jackets," I said quietly, my voice barely steady. Tommy looked up at me with those wise brown eyes, and I could see he was processing everything that had just happened. He'd been so quiet during dinner, but I knew he'd heard every word. The last thing I wanted was for my 8-year-old to witness his family tearing his mother apart, but there we were. As I started gathering our things from the entryway, I could hear the family resuming their conversation behind me, their voices deliberately casual now, as if they hadn't just collectively demolished my sense of belonging. Aunt Marie was asking about Uncle Ray's fishing trip again. Cousin Beth was complimenting Linda's pot roast. Life was moving on as if the last 10 minutes hadn't happened at all. That's when my mother appeared in the hallway, her expression softening slightly. For a moment, I thought maybe she was going to apologize, maybe acknowledge that things had gotten out of hand. "Sarah, honey, don't leave like this. We're about to do the slideshow." The slideshow. I'd completely forgotten about the annual Chen family slideshow tradition. Every year, Linda would set up her old projector in the living room and go through box of family photos, projecting them onto the white wall while everyone gathered around to reminisce. It was usually the highlight of the reunion. the part where everyone felt most connected to our shared history. Mom, I don't think that's a good idea right now. Oh, come on. Tommy loves the slideshow. You can't deprive him of family traditions because you're upset. There it was again. The subtle implication that I was being selfish, that my hurt feelings were less important than maintaining appearances. But she was right about one thing. Tommy did love looking at old family photos. He'd often asked to see pictures of me when I was little, or his grandfather who'd passed away when he was 3. I looked down at Tommy, who was holding his jacket in his small hands, clearly torn between loyalty to me and curiosity about the family photos. He'd been looking forward to this reunion for weeks, and despite everything that had just happened, he was still just a little boy who wanted to feel connected to his extended family. "Please, Mom," Tommy said quietly. "Can we stay for the pictures?" My heart broke a little more. Here was my son, asking to stay in a room full of people who had just spent 20 minutes explaining why his mother was a disappointment to the family. But his request was so earnest, so hopeful, that I couldn't say no. "Okay, buddy, we'll stay for the slideshow." Linda's face brightened immediately. "Wonderful. Marcus is already setting up the projector. You know how he is with technology." Of course. Even the slideshow setup was another opportunity to praise Marcus while subtly highlighting how I wasn't there to help with family responsibilities. We walked back into the living room where Marcus was indeed fiddling with the old projector, the same one we'd used for these slideshows since I was a teenager. The lights were dimmed and everyone was settling into their usual spots on the couches and chairs. Tommy found a spot on the carpet right in front of the projection area, cross-legged and eager. I took a seat on the far end of the couch, still feeling raw from the dinner conversation but trying to compose myself for Tommy's sake. I told myself I could get through 1 hour of family photos, let Tommy have this experience, and then we'd leave quietly. As Linda began sorting through the photo boxes, I noticed Tommy wasn't just sitting passively like the other kids usually did during these slideshows. He was watching intently, his head tilted slightly in that way he does when he's really concentrating on something. I'd seen that expression when he was working on difficult math homework or trying to solve a puzzle. "All right, everyone," Linda announced, holding up the first batch of photos. "Let's take a trip down memory lane." The first image appeared on the wall, and the room filled with the familiar sounds of family nostalgia. But something was different this time. Tommy wasn't just watching the photos, he was studying them, and I had the strangest feeling that he was seeing something the rest of us were missing. The slideshow had been going for about 15 minutes, and I was starting to relax despite everything. There's something soothing about old family photos, the way they capture moments when everything felt simpler. Linda was in her element, narrating each image with stories I'd heard dozens of times before. "Oh, here's Marcus's high school graduation," she said proudly as the image filled the wall. "Look how handsome he looked in his cap and gown." The family murmured their agreement, and Marcus actually blushed a little from his spot on the couch. I had to admit, he did look good that day. What I remembered about that graduation was driving 4 hours after pulling a double shift at my old job, arriving just in time to see him walk across the stage, and then staying late to help clean up the reception afterward. "And this is from my 60th birthday party," Linda continued, clicking to the next photo. What a wonderful day that was. The whole family came together to celebrate. I remembered that day, too. I'd organized the surprise party, spent weeks coordinating with relatives, and stayed until midnight washing dishes while everyone else went home. But looking at the photo, you'd never know any of that. The image showed Linda in the center, surrounded by smiling family members, looking genuinely happy. That's when I noticed Tommy shifting restlessly in his spot on the floor. He'd been so focused throughout the slideshow, but now he seemed agitated. He kept looking back at me, then at the photo, then at the family members making their appreciative comments. "Here's Uncle Ray's wedding day," Linda announced, and another wave of nostalgia swept through the room. "Beautiful ceremony," Aunt Marie sighed. "Everyone was there." Tommy suddenly stood up. Not gradually, not tentatively, but in one quick motion that caught everyone's attention. The room fell silent as this quiet 8-year-old positioned himself directly next to the projection screen, his small silhouette casting a shadow across Uncle Ray's wedding photo. "Tommy, honey, you're blocking the picture," Linda said gently, but Tommy didn't move. Instead, he turned to face the room full of adults, his young face serious in a way that made my stomach clench with worry. "You want to know something?" Tommy said, his voice clear and steady despite his size. "Every single memory you guys are talking about, Mom's in them. Look." He pointed directly at the wedding photo. "That's Mom in the background of Uncle Ray's wedding, holding baby Marcus because he was crying and nobody else could calm him down." The room went completely still. I could hear my own heartbeat. Tommy clicked the projector button himself, going back to the previous photo. "There's Mom at Grandpa's funeral." His finger traced a barely visible figure in the corner of the image. "She's the one holding Grandma Linda's hand while everyone else was standing around not knowing what to do." My breath caught in my throat. I had been holding my mother's hand that day, supporting her when her legs gave out during the service. "Tommy, sweetie," I started to say, but he held up his small hand. "I'm not done." He clicked to Marcus's graduation photo. "Mom's right there behind the photographer. She drove 4 hours after working all night just to see Uncle Marcus graduate, and she brought the cake for the party after." Marcus's face had gone pale. Linda's hand was pressed to her throat. Tommy kept going, his voice getting stronger with each revelation. "And at Grandma's birthday party, Mom's the one who organized the whole surprise. She called everyone. She bought the decorations. She stayed late to clean up after everyone else went home." He turned the projector to show more photos, one after another, his young finger pointing out details the adults had forgotten or chosen not to see. "You said, she never does anything, but she's in every important picture. She's always in the background, making sure everyone else is okay. The only pictures she's not in are the ones she took of all of you." The slideshow kept advancing automatically, and with each new image, Tommy's words became more devastating. "Look at Christmas morning 3 years ago. Who do you think wrapped all those presents under the tree? Look at Cousin Beth's baby shower. Who organized the games? Look at Uncle Ray's retirement party. Who drove 2 hours to be there even though she had to work the next morning?" By now, there wasn't a sound in the room except for the quiet hum of the projector. Tommy stood there, 8 years old and fierce, defending his mother with a clarity that cut through years of family mythology. "She's not missing from this family," he said finally. "You just forgot how to see her." The silence that followed Tommy's words was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't just quiet, it was the kind of heavy, suffocating silence that happens when an uncomfortable truth settles over a room and no one knows how to respond. The projector continued its automatic advance, clicking through more family photos, each one now serving as evidence of Tommy's devastating revelation. I watched my family's faces in the dim light from the screen. Uncle Ray was staring at his hands. Cousin Beth had tears in her eyes. Aunt Marie looked like she'd been slapped. But it was my mother's reaction that broke my heart all over again. Linda had her hand pressed to her throat, her mouth slightly open, and she was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of shock, recognition, and something that looked like shame. Marcus was the first to break. He stood up abruptly from the couch, ran his hands through his hair, and let out a long, shaky breath. "Oh my God," he whispered. "Sarah, I'm so sorry." His voice cracked on the last word, and suddenly my 29-year-old brother looked like a little boy who just realized he'd done something terrible. He walked over to where I was sitting, and I could see his hands were trembling. "I've been living at home for years, contributing almost nothing, and I called you selfish." He sat down heavily beside me. "I'm the one who should be ashamed." Before I could respond, my mother stood up slowly, her movements careful and deliberate. She walked to where Tommy was still standing by the projector and knelt down so she was at his eye level. "Tommy," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "how did you see all of that when we couldn't?" Tommy shrugged, the way 8-year-olds do when adults ask them to explain something that seems obvious. "I watch Mom all the time. She's always helping people. She helped Mrs. Patterson next door carry her groceries when her back hurt. She stayed late at work when her friend Lisa's mom was sick. She always sees when people need help." Linda reached out and touched Tommy's face gently. "You're absolutely right, sweetheart. And Grandma owes your mom a very big apology." She stood up and turned to face me, and I could see tears streaming down her cheeks. "Sarah, honey, I'm so sorry. We've been so focused on when you weren't here that we forgot about all the times you were. We forgot about all the ways you've taken care of this family." The floodgates opened after that. Uncle Ray admitted he'd never thanked me for organizing his retirement party. Cousin Beth remembered how I'd driven 3 hours in a snowstorm to be at her daughter's baptism. Aunt Marie apologized for all the comments about my choices and acknowledged that I'd been doing the best I could in an impossible situation. But it was Marcus who surprised me the most. "Sarah, I need you to know something. Every time I criticized you for not being here, I knew I was being unfair. I knew you were working your ass off to take care of Tommy. I think I was jealous." "Jealous of what?" "Of your strength, of the fact that you built a life for yourself and Tommy even when everything fell apart. I've been hiding in Mom's house for years because I'm scared to try and fail like that." I looked around the room at these people I'd felt so disconnected from, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Tommy came over and climbed into my lap, his small arms wrapping around my neck. "You okay, Mom?" "I'm perfect, baby. Thank you for seeing me." The rest of the evening was different in ways I couldn't have imagined when we'd arrived that afternoon. Instead of feeling like an outsider looking in, I felt like I was part of something again. We stayed until almost 10 p.m., well past my usual bedtime routine, but for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't worried about being tired at work the next day. When Linda asked if I'd help plan the next family gathering, I said yes, but with a new understanding of my own worth. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. Tommy had shown me that my contributions had always been seen and valued, just not by the people I'd expected. Sometimes it takes the honest eyes of a child to reveal the truth that adults are too proud or too hurt to acknowledge. And sometimes the most powerful defense doesn't come from defending yourself, but from someone who truly sees your worth and isn't afraid to speak it. That family reunion changed everything for us. Today, our family gatherings look completely different. My mother calls me every week just to check in, not because she needs anything, but because she wants to hear about my life. Marcus moved out 6 months later and started his own landscaping business. He tells people that his 8-year-old nephew taught him what courage really looks like. And Tommy? Well, he's still that same observant, wise little boy who sees things the rest of us miss. He's taught me that sometimes the people who love us most are the ones standing right in front of us, even when we feel invisible to everyone else. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt unseen or unappreciated by the people who should love you most, I want you to know that your worth isn't determined by whether others recognize it. Sometimes it takes time, sometimes it takes a child's honesty, but the truth has a way of revealing itself. Have you ever had someone stand up for you when you couldn't stand up for yourself? Or maybe you've been the one to speak truth in a difficult family situation. I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this video touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And if you want to see more real stories about family, healing, and finding your voice, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Every story shared is a reminder that we're not alone in our struggles. Thank you for listening to my family's story. Until next time, remember that you matter. Your contributions matter. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply see someone for who they really are.